Okay, everybody, back with Gordon Hester. We're going to come away with some marching orders here. I'm going to wrap this thing up. It's been such a great topic of conversation, and we can have him back later on. You've been an awesome guest. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We've talked about mindset. We've talked about that customer experience. We talked about how that relates to price. What is it, in one thing, that if these guys could take away from this conversation, what would you want that to be?
So, I kind of, when you ask that question, it brings me back to a lesson that one of my mentors taught me. And that lesson was that business ultimately is the pursuit of a higher quality problem. And I know that most entrepreneurs want to grow, and not just financially, but they want to grow with life balance. They want to be happy. All these things begin to matter with longevity. So the first thing I would tell your audience is, if you have a business, what higher quality problem do you need to be solving? And because that's where you should focus your attention. And of course, anything to do with that always comes back to time. So I've literally traveled to 14 different countries teaching entrepreneurs about business. I have yet to go to a country where I've asked people what's the biggest challenge, where the answer wasn't always the same: time. So time is that thing that's a limited resource that most people struggle with. And for what it's worth, me too. My whole business career has been managing multiple businesses, traveling all over the world. There's all this complexity where managing time has become a challenge. So I suspect it's a challenge for your audience too. So I'll see if I can give you advice on how to better use your time. So first thing you got to remember with time is it's a time value proposition. So value is about your needs, and you better be clear on what they are and how the use of your time serves that. So if I'm going to, for instance, invest an hour of my time in the business, am I investing it the right way? In a way that my business is going to grow, that I'm going to be happy, that ultimately that time value proposition becomes part of everything. But there's also a balance part of this, that becomes really important to the longevity of a business. Because if you kind of think like a lot of entrepreneurs believe, especially early entrepreneurs, that this is really about an 80-hour work week, I don't know anybody 10 years into the business that's like, oh, well, how do I make it a 90-hour work week? They're all trying to figure out how to make it a 10-hour work week. So sort of the idea of being smarter with time and having more balance in life ultimately becomes a huge part of all business. And my guess is, as part of your audience, they're probably dealing with it too. So maybe I can give you some advice on where to start there. So the first is, I think it's important to recognize that balance equals longevity. So if you don't have balance with time, with your business and your life, ultimately it will be destructive to both. And I believe that with all my heart. But what is balance? Like, how do I go about doing this? And I sought for so many years to try to figure this out. And then I read this incredible book. It's called The Power of Full Engagement by Dr. Jim Loehr, I think it was. But the book talked about, so he's a high achievement expert. So people that were really, really high achievers would come to him to figure out how to get more value from time. And you would think he would be like, oh, well, you need to focus more on this strategy. And it was all about business. And it turned out it wasn't. That he got more out of people from an achievement standpoint by bringing balance to their life. And what he talked about was there's 4 energy cycles that ultimately determine the value of time. So our time has to be invested mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Okay.
And in this book, it talked about what happens when you get out of balance with that. So I'll just give you for instance, I tend to lean really heavy on mental energy. I'm a worker. I put in a lot of hours and I love it. But when I get out of balance, what happens is I begin to lose my physical mastery. I don't go to the gym. I come home and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm just not going to go tonight. And I don't make time for that, even though I know that if you think about an hour a day to your physical mastery is 4% of your day. Who can't get 4% of their day if it matters? Now, saying that, if you're in the landscaping business and you're out in the yard, physical mastery is probably the last thing you got to worry about. But what about emotional mastery, relationships, and being strong to deal with the drama of life? Or what about that spiritual part where you refuel? And so just to give you kind of an example of one thing that I dealt with, spiritual mastery changed my life. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the use of time to refuel and understand life. So a number of years ago, I was in Fiji and working out at Tony Robbins Resort with him at his house. And I asked Tony one question. And that one question was, if you could have any skill in the world, what would it be? And he said it would be the art of self-communication. And I literally looked at him and was like, dude, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
That's how I'm looking at you right
yeah,
now.
like English, please. I don't get it. And he said, if you ever take quiet time to process what's going on in your world and to figure out how to pivot and to change and to kind of stay in a path of momentum, your whole life can be amazing. And what I took away from that was, I don't take any quiet time to think. I'm just always on the go. But then I changed that. I built, it's funny, I think I mentioned this year, discipline's a function of what's important. All of a sudden, quiet time became important. And then when I built it into my schedule, into my daily method of operation, it changed my life. It didn't just change the happiness component of my life. This is when I got wealthy in business. This is when all of a sudden the time I invested in business, I got so much value that I wasn't getting before because I had all these inefficiencies because that's where all my life lived. So I started thinking at nights and processing questions and sometimes just taking time to draw on a whiteboard. I love drawing on whiteboards or listen to music. And I will tell you that time changed my life.
It's killing you not to draw on this right now.
Oh, I'm going to grab a pen in a minute. But I think if you're dealing with time, don't get caught in what compliance teaches. Compliance teaches us more hours directed to something equals a bigger result. So if I'm working 60 hours a week and I want my business to grow, I need to go to 80 hours a week. The reality is that's not true. It isn't about going to 80 hours a week. It's about learning how to go to 40 hours a week and get 80 hours worth of value out of it. And to do that, you truly have to learn to balance things away where you get that value from time. And most entrepreneurs never understand that. And then if you kind of carry it out over time, what you begin to realize is they have bad relationships, their marriages start having problems, their health becomes an issue, they become unhappy in their business because they're just working all the time. So if you really want to have an amazing business, time becomes that one thing you have to manage well. And if you do that and you keep that balance and understand for the long haul, for the game that lets you win over 20 or 30 years, get into that early. Don't make the mistake of doing what compliance teaches, which is burning yourself out working a 70 to 80 hour week. And if you do that and you're smart about it, all of a sudden business becomes fun because the time you invest produces a result, whether it's a result for your clients or whether it's your own happiness. And to me, those things became really, really important. And when I didn't have them, business kind of sucked. And that's a funny thing. It sucked even when I was really successful at it because ultimately I wasn't doing the things that produce happiness. So I think part of success is fulfillment. Part of it is that happiness component. And kind of interesting right now, if you look at all things going on in business culture and all the analysis around this, so sort of the science behind this, everything's gone back to happiness. You take something like Google as an example. Google doesn't go in and tell their engineers work 80 hours a week. They actually allow them to have 25% of their time to do whatever they want. They can take a nap, they can play ping pong because they know giving them that freedom to sort of recalibrate so that they can be efficient when they go to work actually produces a greater result. So if you look at the strictness of the way business works today, when I grew up, it was all about work. Now it's about balance and it's about happiness and it's about getting value for time. It's all changed. And most small entrepreneurs don't understand this, but they should because that is the long game. So I will tell you, find that higher quality kind of gear you need to get into, that higher quality problem you need to solve. Start mastering that time game. Look at your time. Look at your daily method of operation, your habits, and don't try to change everything at once. Take one little thing and begin to change it. And then what you do is you get in a state of momentum. And sort of I'll end on that. So momentum, ultimately, so I imagine all of you probably want to grow your business. So if I want to grow my business, how do I do that? There's only three things that you have to pay attention to. One is mindset. So if my programming of my mind is wrong, it's not going to turn out well in business. But if I have that right, which most people do not, then the next is all activities, strategies, execution things, all the aspects of business that are taught. But the other third piece is the resolve, persevering through challenging times, having the courage to make a a change when most people wouldn't make the change. But if you get the mindset right, if you master the execution game, and you have that courage and persevere to change and to understand that all business is about seeking relevancy and leadership in the marketplace, and you learn to do that with any business, it's amazing what you can do. And that's what I would wish for them. So pick your area where you need to go figure out where to pivot, where to make a change, and make the change, make a decision. And if you do, and you go to work, good things will happen.
I don't know about these guys, but I'm ready to start making that change right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan.
So much for the time. Really great stuff. Hope you guys all enjoyed that. There'll be more to come from Gordon later on down the road.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Good luck, everyone.